I'm Ruth.
And I'm Darren.
Of the Rad Adventures Network.
And this is Sensational Sleuths.
Welcome back to Sensational Sleuths, where we talk about some of our favorite mystery stories, whether they're movies, books, comics, or TV shows.
The episodes in this series are short, summary-level discussions where we tell you what a title is about, who the main characters are, where it is set, when it was released, why we like it, and how we first discovered it.
Mysteries are a favorite genre of ours, and over the course of this show, we hope to talk more about some of our all-time favorite characters, writers, films, TV shows, and comics.
In an earlier episode, we talked about Sherlock Holmes, and today we're taking another look at the character through the eyes of Academy Award-winning Japanese animation director Hayao Miyazaki, as we talk about the series Sherlock Hound.
It's a delightful animated series, and we hope you'll enjoy hearing our thoughts.
Sensational Sleuths is part of the Rad Adventures Network.
If you enjoy the show, please consider checking out our other shows that are available through most podcast apps, including Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Amazon Music, as well as YouTube.
Trekker Talk is a fan podcast devoted to the adventures of 23rd century bounty hunter Mercy St. Clair, from the pages of the sci-fi comic Trekker by writer and artist Ron Randall.
Warlord Worlds is a fan podcast devoted to the comic creations of writer and artist Mike Grell, including The Warlord, John Sable, and Green Arrow.
Xenozoic Xenophiles covers the post-apocalyptic adventure series Xenozoic Tales, featuring Cadillacs and dinosaurs by writer and artist Mark Schultz.
But now, it's time to talk about Sherlock Hound on Sensational Sleuths, right after this promo from another podcast you might enjoy.
You like cheap comic books, right? Well, I'm Professor Allen, and I talk about cheap comic books on the Quarterbin podcast. In every episode, I'll dissect a single comic from my collection, as long as I paid no more than 25 cents for the issue. Forget about $4 new comics that you can read in 4 minutes, or crossover events that can cost $100 to collect. Join me in the Quarterbin, where even bad comics are a bargain, and good ones are a steal. The Quarterbin podcast is part of the Relatively Geeky Podcast Network. Visit us at relativelygeekypodcast.blogspot.com or search Relatively Geeky or Quarterbin Podcast in iTunes. I guarantee it'll be worth every penny.
Sherlock Hound is a 26-episode animated television series that aired in Japan from November 1984 to May 1985.
The series takes place in England in the late 1800s or early 1900s, just like the original Sherlock Holmes stories by Arthur Conan Doyle. However, the series reimagines the characters as anthropomorphic canines.
From the title, you would probably guess our heroic detective is a hound, and while early designs envision the character as a hound, in the final design, the character is actually a fox. Meanwhile, his faithful companion Watson is a Scottish Terrier to honor Arthur Conan Doyle's connection to Edinburgh. The series combines the imagination of the classic stories with beautiful but playful animation, and we get to see the world of Sherlock Holmes through the creative mind of Japanese animation director Hayao Miyazaki.
Please note that in this episode we're going to refer to our detective as Sherlock, though we know Sherlock Holmes fans would normally refer to the character as Holmes. We're simply doing this to avoid constantly calling the character Hound.
Before we get further into the world of Sherlock Hound, let's take a moment to get to know Hayao Miyazaki, who is an animator, producer, director, writer, and manga artist, and is generally regarded as the Walt Disney of Japan, and one of the most accomplished filmmakers in the history of animation.
Miyazaki was born in Tokyo in 1941, and the impact of growing up in the aftermath of World War II can be seen in many of his stories, which feature themes such as the relationship between nature and technology, the importance of art and craftsmanship, and the difficulty of being a pacifist in a violent world, as well as featuring strong female characters based on his mother, who was resilient and independently minded as she raised a family while facing significant health challenges.
Miyazaki graduated from university with a degree in political science and economics. However, as a fan of anime and manga, which are the Japanese words for animation and comics, he joined Toei Animation Company in 1963 and worked as an in-between and background artist on several animated projects throughout the 1960s.
In 1971, Miyazaki became co-director on the first Lupin III animated series, which was based on a popular manga created in 1967 by writer and artist Monkey Punch, whose real name was Katsuhiko Kato. In the series, the character of Lupin III is the grandson of the gentleman thief Arsène Lupin from the books by French writer Maurice Leblanc, which makes this an indirect connection between Miyazaki and our famous detective.
Leblanc was a contemporary of Arthur Conan Doyle, and Sherlock Holmes fans might be aware that Leblanc put the detective in an early Arsène Lupin story titled Sherlock Holmes Arrives Too Late. Arthur Conan Doyle filed a legal objection to the use of his character, and Leblanc skirted the issue by simply moving one letter of the character's name, making him Sherlock Holmes in reprints and subsequent stories.
Following the success of the first series, Lupin III returned for a second animated series in 1977, and the production company wanted Miyazaki to return as well, but he was currently directing the animated series Future Boy Conan. However, Miyazaki did return to the franchise to direct what would be his first theatrical animated feature and the second Lupin III theatrical film, titled The Castle of Cagliostro in 1979. In the movie, Miyazaki established a template for virtually every Lupin III series and movie to follow, making the character a likable rogue and heroic thief who drives a Fiat 500.
The movie is still considered a classic today and is occasionally re-released in cinemas. Director Steven Spielberg has called the movie one of the best action films ever made, and it inspired elements in several Disney and Pixar movies that followed, including the climactic Big Ben sequence in The Great Mouse Detective, which is an homage to a sequence from the movie.
The Lupin III franchise continues to be popular today, having spawned 7 separate TV series, more than 24 television movies, and a half-dozen theatrical movies, including one just released earlier this year, as well as video games, numerous toys, and even a stage musical. However, Miyazaki left Lupin III behind following The Castle of Cagliostro.
As an animator, Miyazaki had already established his signature art style early in his career, and as a longtime fan of Arthur Conan Doyle's stories, Miyazaki turned his attention to Sherlock Holmes in 1981 and even traveled to Europe as part of his research.
Miyazaki created character designs and storyboards that balanced his love for Doyle's detective stories with his love of thrilling chases and automobiles and flying machines. His whimsical designs drew on the stories of Jules Verne, giving the series a retro-futuristic steampunk aesthetic, long before that genre became as popular as it is today.
He developed clever stories, intricate designs, and lush artwork that created a rich variation on the familiar world of Sherlock Holmes. And he created canine counterparts of the familiar characters, providing them with unique personalities and giving this adaptation a distinct visual look.
Most episodes of Sherlock Hound include exaggerated chase scenes featuring early automobiles, whimsical flying machines, bizarre underwater submarines, or gigantic mechanical contraptions, along with large doses of slapstick humor and a complete disregard of real-world physics.
This creates a charming alternate version of Victorian England, with its European architecture, cobblestone streets, and quaint rural villages, mixed with lots of charm and plenty of playful energy that makes the series appealing to children, while still offering clever stories for adults to enjoy.
All of the characters a Sherlock Holmes fan would expect are featured in the series.
Sherlock Hound lives at 221B Baker Street in London and is a brilliant master of deduction who is endlessly fascinated by solving mysteries. He is observant and inventive and frequently performs experiments, just like in the original stories. However, he is a little more even-tempered, patient, and polite, which is a good fit for the family-friendly series. Of course, Hayao Miyazaki loves automobiles, and in the series, Sherlock Hound drives an 1894 Benz Velo to race around the city of London and out into the countryside.
Dr. Watson is Sherlock's trusted companion and loyal assistant. Watson is intelligent and competent, as in the original stories, but can be a bit clumsy at times and has trouble keeping up with Sherlock's plans, similar to Nigel Bruce's portrayal in the movies featuring Basil Rathbone as Sherlock Holmes.
Mrs. Hudson is the landlady of 221B Baker Street, just like in the stories. However, anyone who is familiar with the movies of Hayao Miyazaki knows that female characters in his stories are strong, competent, heroic, and resourceful, and Mrs. Hudson in this series is a sophisticated young widow who plays an active role in several episodes.
Inspector Lestrade is a gruff and blustering character who respects Sherlock's talent, but can be hot-headed and impulsive at times, and sometimes dismissive of Sherlock, just like in the original stories. Lestrade is often accompanied by a large contingent of incompetent officers, and their antics are sometimes portrayed in slapstick style, just like the silent-era Keystone Cops movies.
Professor Moriarty is the recurring villain in most episodes. He is portrayed as a wily wolf who invents elaborate, over-the-top schemes that are excessively complex. In the series, Moriarty is a comedic villain who is more humorous than menacing, and, along with his bumbling henchmen, Todd and Smiley, provides the comic relief in the series.
While all of the other characters are anthropomorphic dogs, Miyazaki intentionally designed the hero as a fox and the villain as a wolf to clearly distinguish them from the other characters. And in a bit of trivia, the original names of Moriarty's henchmen were Nigel and Bruce, which we think was a terrific idea, but the names were later changed to Todd and Smiley during production.
Unfortunately, legal issues with the estate of Arthur Conan Doyle brought production of the series to an abrupt halt in 1982. Production was suspended for several months during negotiations before finally resuming nearly a year later.
By that time, Hayao Miyazaki had begun production on the feature film Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, and for that reason, Miyazaki did not return when production resumed on the series. Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind would go on to be a huge success for Miyazaki, leading to the creation of Studio Ghibli, with fellow director Isao Takahata and producer Toshio Suzuki.
Over the next 40 years, Miyazaki would direct many other popular and critically acclaimed films, including My Neighbor Totoro, Castle in the Sky, Kiki's Delivery Service, Princess Mononoke, Howl's Moving Castle, Porco Rosso, and the Academy Award-winning films Spirited Away and The Boy and the Heron. Studio Ghibli is now one of the most successful anime studios in Japan, releasing many critically acclaimed movies, and in addition to those films, there is also an amazing museum and a popular theme park.
Miyazaki based the name of the studio on the name of an Italian airplane, as well as an Italian word of Arabic origin that references a desert wind. Miyazaki wanted the name of the studio to reflect his love of aircraft, and also to represent a new wind blowing through the anime industry. And while the original Italian pronunciation would be closer to Ghibli with a hard G sound, Miyazaki chose to have the studio name use the Japanese pronunciation of the word with a softer J sound, making the pronunciation Studio Ghibli.
When production resumed on Sherlock Hound, the remaining 20 episodes were directed by Kyosuke Mikuriya, who had been involved with the production from the beginning, working as a storyboard artist and second-unit director. Coincidentally, Mikuriya had directed more than half of the episodes of the second Lupin the Third TV series, providing a nice connection to Miyazaki. Some fans also feel the Mikuriya episodes are more closely inspired by the original Doyle stories.
However, while he was no longer directly involved, the influence of Hayao Miyazaki remained part of the series. Miyazaki had developed the original concept of the show, as well as the initial character designs and story ideas for the series. Miyazaki had created layouts, concept drawings, and storyboards, as well as the technical designs of many vehicles and airships that established the overall look and feel of the show.
When the series was finally broadcast in 1984, the 6 episodes completed with Hayao Miyazaki as director were not shown as the first 6 episodes. Instead, those episodes were spread throughout the first half of the series.
This was a great decision, in our opinion, because while those 6 episodes clearly bear Miyazaki's unmistakable creativity, seeing them interspersed throughout the series shows there is consistency and continuity through the entire 26-episode series, including the episodes that weren't directed by Miyazaki.
Every episode is filled with elaborate chase sequences, fantastical airships, and other mechanical contraptions, but they also feature clever stories that are filled with warmth and show that kindness and teamwork triumph over greed and selfishness.
Of course, no matter how good the other episodes might be, we understand everyone wants to know which are the 6 episodes that Miyazaki directed. So here they are.
Episode 3, A Small Client, in which Sherlock Hound helps a young girl find her missing father, which leads to the discovery of a counterfeiting operation. This episode is loosely based on Arthur Conan Doyle's story, The Engineer's Thumb.
Episode 4, Mrs. Hudson is taken hostage, in which Moriarty kidnaps our hero's landlady, thinking that will give him leverage over Sherlock Hound. The episode is based on the story Lady Frances Carfax, and includes elements from the story The Empty House.
Episode 5, The Blue Carbuncle, in which an orphan girl pickpockets a valuable gem that Professor Moriarty has just stolen. This episode is loosely based on the original story of the same title. This episode may have been intended to be shown third since it includes a scene where Sherlock and Moriarty meet. The first episode shown features a meeting between Sherlock and Watson, and the second episode shown introduces Moriarty, though he and Sherlock do not meet.
Episode 9, Treasure Under the Sea, in which Sherlock and Watson help the Royal Navy recover a submarine stolen by Professor Moriarty. This episode is based on the story The Bruce Partington Plans. It also features a visual gag of Inspector Lestrade's officers that Miyazaki had previously used with Inspector Zenigata's officers in an earlier episode of Lupin III titled Farewell, My Dearest Lupin.
Episode 10, The White Cliffs of Dover, in which our heroes investigate the sabotaging of the new airmail postal service between London and Paris. This episode features an in-depth backstory about Mrs. Hudson, and we learn that she and her now-deceased husband were early aviators.
Episode 11, The Sovereign Gold Coins, in which Moriarty steals valuable gold coins from an elaborately constructed safe. The castle scene in this episode is very similar to the one in Miyazaki's movie Lupin III, The Castle of Cagliostro.
Of course, Sherlock Holmes is popular around the world, and while the series was airing in Japan, it was already being prepared for international distribution.
Broadcasts of Lupin III were already quite popular in Italy and other parts of Europe, and Sherlock Hound found similar success in Europe, and especially in Italy, where the broadcasts in the 1980s attracted large numbers of viewers, and where the series is fondly remembered as a beloved childhood classic.
In the hopes of cracking the U.S. market, the Japanese producers commissioned an English dub of the first completed episode, which was A Small Client, directed by Hayao Miyazaki, and it was shown as a special on HBO with the title The Adventure of Sherlock Hound.
Interestingly, this episode was shown on HBO in November 1983, a year before the series premiered in Japan. However, that special didn't attract much attention in the US, and the series never gained mainstream popularity in America like other anime series before and after. However, the studio had confidence in the series and proceeded with dubs in several languages, and a complete English version of the entire series, using a different cast from the initial dub, was recorded in late 1984.
This English version was well received by critics and features charming voice acting that captures both the wit of Holmes and the slapstick comedy of Moriarty's schemes. This English version was released in 1985 and aired on the BBC in the UK and on the 9 network in Australia, and was syndicated on some local stations in the US, and has been released on home video several times over the years.
A few episodes of the English version were released on videotape by Celebrity Home Entertainment in 1989. Then a complete collection of the English version was released in both dubbed and subtitled formats in 2002. Pioneer Entertainment released the DVD set in the US, and Manga Entertainment released the DVDs in the UK. And a new version, remastered in high definition, was released on Blu-ray by Discotheque Media in 2022.
The series is also available to stream on several services including Amazon Prime Video, Hulu, FilmRise, and on the official TMS YouTube channel. TMS is the Japanese studio that produced the series. However, viewers should be aware that most of these sites have the episodes listed in the production order instead of the original broadcast order.
The episodes certainly were not intended to be watched in production order, since Sherlock and Watson meet in the Four Signatures, which is the first episode broadcast, but the 11th episode produced. And Watson moves into 221B Baker Street in The Crown of Mazalin, which is the second episode broadcast, but the 10th episode produced. So when watching the episodes in the produced order, you will actually see Watson move in with Holmes before the two have even met.
It has been 40 years since the series first aired in Japan, and it continues to be popular today. In fact, the 6 episodes directed by Hayao Miyazaki were collected into 2 compilation movies and released in cinemas in Japan earlier this year to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the series.
Certainly, this continuing popularity is due to the enduring interest in all things Sherlock Holmes, as well as the continuing popularity of the films and TV shows of Hayao Miyazaki. Sherlock Hound is a Japanese anime, based on a British literary character, and that mix created a truly unique and enjoyable animated series. For fans of Hayao Miyazaki, it's a wonderful snapshot of his genius just before establishing Studio Ghibli. And for fans of Sherlock Holmes, it's a different and refreshing perspective of familiar characters and settings.
The periodic re-releases in different video formats helps the series find new fans each generation with light-hearted and family-friendly tales of adventure that are both clever and funny. And of course, there are its many steampunk elements before steampunk was even a widely known word, and long before steampunk became as popular as it is today. The series has a timeless charm, and the many whimsical machines and fantastical contraptions feel just as imaginative today as they did in the 1980s.
We are both longtime Sherlock Holmes fans, and we've been fans of anime since long before it became mainstream in the US. Because of this, we learned about the series through magazines and books long before we were ever able to see it, and we sought out information about it and found a few episodes on videotape long ago.
Needless to say, we were very happy when Pioneer released the complete series on DVD, and we have since upgraded to the excellent Blu-ray edition released by Discotheque. The video in that remastered edition is stunning and beautiful.
In closing, we'll just say if you're a fan of Sherlock Holmes or a fan of Hayao Miyazaki, we encourage you to seek out Sherlock Hound. Watch Holmes outwit Moriarty in a steam-powered chase through Victorian London, and listen to Watson's endearing loyalty and laugh at Moriarty's bumbling antics. The show will leave you with a smile on your face and a sense of wonder.
We hope you've enjoyed our conversation about Sherlock Hound, and we sincerely thank you for listening. We'll be right back with our wrap-up and contact information.
Tenchi's the father? Nani?
Akane Tendo pigtailed girl. Akane Tendo pigtailed girl. Akane Tendo pig...
Pervert! He's a pervert! What are you talking about? Pervert!
Madame Patra will be lonely if she has to travel to hell by herself. You should give her some company on the way.
Because it has already begun.
Big in Japan, an anime podcast, now playing on fanholespodcast.blogspot.com.
Before we go, we want to provide our contact information.
You can write to us directly at radadventuresnetwork@gmail.com or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky under the name Rad Adventures Network.
And in case you haven't already deduced it, RAD, R-A-D, is short for Ruth Ann Darren.
You can listen to the show through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and most other podcast apps.
You can even find the show on YouTube under Rad Adventures Network.
And you can always visit radadventuresnetwork.com, where you'll find all of the episodes of all of our podcasts, including our main shows Trekker Talk, Warlord Worlds, and Xenozoic Xenophiles, as well as other podcasts including Sensational Sleuths, Super Secret Spies, Continental Comics, and more.
If you like the show, please consider leaving a review. While you won't find a specific place to review Sensational Sleuths, we hope you'll leave a review under Rad Adventures Network. Every review helps the podcast be more likely to show up in search results.
And on YouTube, we hope you'll subscribe to the channel and give us some likes on the videos.
Thanks for listening, and we hope you'll come back next time for another new episode of Sensational Sleuths.
Rad Adventures Network is a proud member of the Comics Podcast Network. For more information, please visit comicpodcasts.com. The theme music is Springing Violins from Royalty Free Music Maker. We make no money from this podcast and no copyright infringement is intended.